Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. This beatitude is set in a continual loop from mercy to mercy. The kingdom of heaven is like a king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. Jesus begins a story in Matthew 18. Now, the first slave had an enormous amount of debt. He owes 150,000 years worth of back labor, an impossible amount of debt to pay off. And he begs for mercy, and he gets mercy. In the story, the forgiven slave goes to one of his fellow slaves and demands what is owed to him. And he goes from forgiven servant to debt collector. Mercy is asked, and he refuses to show it. Word gets back around to the merciful king, and now his mercy runs out. The gracious king turns into a vengeful judge. Do you know, friend, what made the king turn so quickly? He asked a question. He said, "Shouldn't you also have mercy on your fellow servant just as I've had mercy on you?" The forgiven servant refuses to forgive. The one shown mercy denies mercy. The one given a second chance offers no chance. And we learn that forgiveness has limits, but in God's economy, the limits are the ones that we choose to place on it ourselves. The limits we place on mercy will be the extent to which mercy is offered to us. Or, as James, the brother of Jesus, says, "For judgment will be without mercy to anyone who has shown no mercy. Mercy triumphs over judgment." Blessed are the forgiving ones, for they will be forgiven. Blessed are those who know when you ask Jesus into your heart, well, he's going to bring his friends with him. The poor, the marginalized, the forsaken. Blessed are those who know they can't have Jesus without his friends. As all of you, I have been watching with a hurting heart what's happening in Ukraine. And along with you, I'm tempted to let anger and hatred be my go-to reaction. However, I will say it's been very hard to go to hate when you're reading the Beatitudes alongside the nightly news. And it reminds me of a story that South African Methodist pastor Reverend Peter Story tells. In Moscow in 1941, the day came when the 20,000 German army prisoners were to be marched through the streets in front of a population who had bore the burden of their cruelty. The pavements were crowded that day, mainly with women and children, those who had borne the brunt of that terrible suffering. Most of their menfolk were dead, and almost everyone had lost a husband, a son. Many had lost mothers, sisters, daughters because of this army, these people that were marching in front of them in the street. So you can imagine something of what it felt like that day. At least they were going to see their hated enemy. And there were angry mutterings and shouts of hate as the first of the defeated army, the generals, the prisoners who were still arrogant, strutted at the fore. People spat in the snow. But then came the soldiers. Now, these were just boys, really, shuffling through the snow, their feet frostbitten, wrapped in newspapers, many of them on makeshift crutches, others being led by one of their mates. And silence just fell. And all you could hear was the shuffling of feet and the thumping of crutches, the shuffling of a defeated army of broken young boys. And then there was sudden movement. A woman pushed herself through the crowd to the Russian soldiers guarding the pavement, and she said, "Let me through." And this bent old woman rushed across to one of the starved German prisoners, and everybody held their breath. What was she going to do? Slap him? Spit on him? She reached into her shawl, and she took out a crust of bread, and she pushed it awkwardly into the pocket of that soldier, so exhausted that his feet was simply just sliding along. And then all of a sudden, from every direction, women began to hand over bread, and somehow the hatred was gone. Enemies had ceased being enemies. And why? Because one person, such an ordinary person, intervened into that cycle of hate and hurt and revenge, and with a simple act of pardoning love. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, and whose hunger for righteousness creates in them a longing for all that is wrong in our world to be made right. For then we will all be filled with God's love. And blessed are those who are merciful, for they shall demonstrate to the world the look of divine love from a hill called Calvary. If you like this video, we want to encourage you to like and share it and join us as we build bridges to others online.